Good morning and welcome to Pediatric and School-Based AAC Evaluations webinar. Thank you for attending. This is a great webinar to get started as we gear up for school because the school year is definitely starting for most of us, I'm sure. I would like to know who all is joining the call with me today. So please tell me what your primary role is. And as you do that, I will tell you just a little bit about myself. I am a speech-language pathologist and assistive technology specialist, and I have been working in the field of speech-language pathology for the last 12 years. While I do both AAC and assistive technology evaluations, my heart is with AAC and pediatric population. I do see adults as well. I specialize in eye gaze evaluations, but today we're talking about pediatric and school-based evals as a whole. So thank you all for letting me know who is here. We have some assistive technology specialists, occupational therapists, thank you. Some PTs, and if you chose other, if you would just, in your question section, could you just type and tell me who you might be, since we didn't have your primary role represented here. And thank you so much for joining us today. So today we're going to talk about what are the challenges to PEDS and school-based AAC evaluations, some tools and strategies that we can use, and some practical tips to streamline our AAC evaluations and those device submissions. So let's get started with the challenges to AAC. So a lot of these challenges, and I'm going to call them today gray cloud challenges, they really can sometimes present themselves in such a way it feels like we're sort of closing the door or having a door shut to helping a child get the intervention they need. Some of those challenges could be, I think that the biggest one is time constraints. I've worked in several different areas of the field, whether it's directly in the home with the child, I've worked in school, and also in private clinics doing these types of evaluations. So I understand no matter what setting you're in, there's definitely going to be time constraints and challenges with the lengthiness of an AAC evaluation, and especially if you have to submit that report on to insurance for funding. And receptive language can be a challenge, especially if you're trying to test for cognition and you know this child may not show up on as far as any scoring. You may not be able to receive a score for the child, or your typical PLS or other testing, you won't get results. That can be a challenge, especially if you don't know where they are cognitively. Attention span and behavioral challenges can definitely come up, especially when working with young children, or if they have something going on behaviorally, identifying those needs, even if it's sensory, it can be a challenge as well. Tools and resources, just having maybe limited tools and resources may be a challenge. Report writing. Just how do I gather that data, or how do I minimize or streamline that process of writing the report so that it maybe doesn't come back to me so often with a denial or things I have to change, or even just the process of the report writing that you do for the school to get what you need. How can I streamline that? Team, and team can be a challenge for many reasons. Sometimes you are the team. Maybe you're the only person that's working with AAC. Or sometimes how can I get other members of the IEP team on board with what I'm doing? So that teams can be a challenge for many, many different reasons. And AAC myths are always a challenge, and there's tons of them out there. I'm sure you all might be familiar with some. We're just going to go over a few. These myths we want to avoid because they really can cause a pitfall. That thinking that someone is too young for AAC or AT intervention. There is no one that's too young for assistive technology intervention. So don't fall into that danger of not even trying something because you may fear the person is too young. Poor cognition equals no device is a myth that I've seen a lot. Just because we don't know exactly what they may score on a cognitive test doesn't mean we can't try AAC or AT with a child. They must be able to answer yes and no prior to getting a device. That is a very dangerous pitfall and a way of thinking to fall into. Please avoid that. Is yes and no a concept that you want someone to eventually be able to get a handle of? Yes, but it should not prevent them from trying AAC. High tech is the best tech. Another dangerous pitfall. High tech will not always be the answer, and even if it is the best tech for one particular child, you still need a low-tech method, a backup method of communicating, just in case that high-tech method breaks down, there's a power outage, no battery, something. You always have to have a low-tech option. So even when you're evaluating for high-tech, please remember to have a backup method. Communication only happens in the, and you can fill in that blank with anything you want. It only happens in my therapy room. It only happens in the home or in the clinic. That type of thinking prevents you from working as a team. So that's a dangerous pitfall. Communication comes first before any other AT intervention, or I should say any other intervention. That is a dangerous pitfall too. If you think about it in your normal therapy, if you're a speech-language pathologist with a child, if you're not doing AAC therapy, maybe you're doing early intervention and you walk into your therapy space or into that child's home, you don't immediately expect them to start communicating with you. You might have to draw them out, play first, know what their favorite activities are. You have to really get to know them. The same with AAC. You aren't going to expect to slap a device in front of a child and, oh, they're going to be able to communicate. Sometimes communication doesn't happen first. Sometimes it's another activity that you're getting them interested in. Maybe it's an environmental control, and you're giving them the power to really control something within their environment, and then you're going to branch off with communication from there. And it doesn't also refer to just AT intervention. Our OTs who are on the line, if when we're working together, maybe it's a sensory issue that we have to kind of address first that's kind of preventing that child from the communication that we know is in there. So let's handle some of our other issues first or simultaneously, but together as a team decide how you're going to do that, and just know that communication doesn't always have to come first. AAC is one size fits all. There's a magical tool or a magical device that's going to work for every child. That is the biggest pitfall that I have noticed over the years, and it could not only be coming from one person. Sometimes we find out about a tool and we get so excited about it and we think it's going to be the one thing that works for everyone. And every child is different, and so we want to make sure we avoid that type of thinking. It could even be a district-wide tool. Well, my district bought everyone this tool or this app, so this is the one we're going to use. That actually can end up hindering your child from the intervention they might need. So those are some of the pitfalls we want to avoid, some of the AAC myths we want to avoid. So during this presentation today, I have 3 case studies we're going to talk about, and hopefully we're going to get a chance at the end to come back to these, or I'll refer back to them throughout the presentation. All of these are children that I've worked with in the past and had firsthand in getting their AAC intervention from observation all the way through to device. So case study A, pediatric 4-year-old. Teachers are observing. They're thinking this child is probably on the spectrum, so maybe not a diagnosis of autism yet, but that's where they're leaning. My first time seeing the child was observation in the classroom, and I walk in and it's circle time, and you have all the other children sitting in their circle, and you have this one little girl who is sitting in a box, a cardboard box, and the aide is holding her in that box. Now, she is able to participate in one part of story time. The rest of the time, she's fidgeting, and they're trying to keep her really still. And the part that she participates in was just like a Big Mac or something. She hits the button, it generates a song, and it launches the rest of the class into singing the song that goes with that story. So before we say anything else, I'm probably cringing like the rest of you are when you hear what I observed in her in that box. I'm sure my OTs on the line are going crazy. I was. This is a big example of that myth that we talked about. You know, communication doesn't come first, and this child really needed some sensory intervention before we could get her going with communication. Let's look at another case study, pediatric 6-year-old with apraxia. So during my initial observation, I observed that he became very frustrated when others didn't understand him. Sometimes teachers were reporting some behaviors such as throwing toys, or I noticed he would verbally sigh, a very frustrated sigh, and just give up, kind of, when he tried to communicate and others didn't understand. The speech pathologist told me that the intervention she was doing for apraxia, he wasn't really making a lot of progress. So we're going to talk about him a little bit later. So first of all, I have 2 children so far. This first one here who's nonverbal, this one, this little boy, the next one here is trying to be verbal. Are their evaluations going to look the same? No, they're going to be very different in the approach to getting them a device, or to the end result will be very different for them. But I'm trying to streamline my process to where I have several different children, but I'm going to use the same process and streamline and the same tools to get both of them to where they need to be. Last example, and again we're going to refer back to these throughout the presentation, case study C, pediatric, 9-year-old, diagnosis of CP. She's independently driving a wheelchair. She's got a new wheelchair. She has a lot of spastic movements. Range of motion is limited in most of her body, but her range of motion in her head is not as limited. She's nonverbal mostly. She attempts to speak, but it's vocalizations. And she can laugh and smile at jokes. She follows everyone's movement with her eyes and head, and you know that she's following the conversation when she smiles or laughs when she hears a joke. So just keep those in mind as we move through the webinar today. So on to our tools, tips, strategies, and tips. Before we do that, I have another question. I would like to know if you guys currently have a useful tool for AAC evaluation. So this is a yes or no question. Just let me know if you're currently using something that you've found that's really useful. Thank you all for answering. What I'm going to be sharing with you, largely a lot of you are saying no that you don't, but we do have some of you saying yes that you do have a useful tool. So if I don't go over the tool that you use and you find it so very helpful, if you don't mind using your questions section, just typing that tool in. I think I'm the only one who can see that, so I will be announcing it out at the end of the session if you want to share. But I'm going to share some tools that I've found very helpful. One more question before we go on. I want to know on the call, do you evaluate as a team, or are you the single evaluator for your AAC evaluations? So tell me how you're doing it wherever you are, whether that's school-based or private therapy. And thank you all for responding. So it looks like largely we have some single evaluators and we have both teams. And so hopefully some of these examples you're going to see where it's going to be beneficial to both scenarios. And it's because I worked where I was the single sole evaluator, and I've also worked as a member of the team. And so let's jump into tools and strategies. So for AAC evaluations, my first tool here is I want you to find tools that will allow you to evaluate the whole person. And what do I mean by that? I don't just mean the whole physical person, even though that's really important. You do want to keep in mind the whole physical person. But I also mean environment, because that child sees you in that one environment, and they go to their classroom, that's another environment. They go to home, wherever they are is involved in being that whole person. So we can't forget all of their environments. And that also speaks to that team question. So when I am evaluating the whole person, I try and make sure my whole team is involved. And it's easy to do when there's an IEP team and you're meeting, but maybe when you're the sole evaluator without a team, you might have to make a team. And so since I've worked in all three areas, I've worked in the home with the child, in the school with the child, and in clinic, I create that team wherever I am. So if I'm at home with the child and the parent, then I'm calling both the private therapist and the school therapist, and I'm getting us together to meet, whether that's by phone or in person. If I am at school, I am contacting that private therapist, and maybe I'm using the parent to help me be that go-between, but I'm making sure that I contact that private therapist, because you don't want to do an AAC intervention and private therapy be doing something totally different. That's not going to help the child. So you want to get on the same page, and you don't want to step on anyone's toes, but when you approach them, you're just approaching them as, I'm another member of the team, and what are you doing? Because we want to try it at school, or we've been trying this at school, it's been really helpful and I want to share. Okay, and then when I'm in the clinic as a private therapist, I do the same thing. I contact the parent and the school-based therapist, and I go to those IEP meetings when I'm the private therapist. And it really has worked really well. That team approach and evaluating the whole person, I'll share one story of a 4-year-old that I had in private therapy with autism. And he also had apraxia. This child had a lot going on. And he also had English as a second language. His first language was Spanish. So right away, Mom and we developed a great plan, but it's not going to be good enough without school being involved. So we invited schools to be involved. When the trial device came in, we made sure that everyone knew what their role was data collecting, and everyone was on board because we involved the school as part of our team. So that child benefited from that, and once the device arrived, once we got it funded, we also had a meeting at the school on how best to implement it. And it wasn't me, the private therapist, telling the school what to do, but we really all delved in as a team to really get that child going with his language and communication. And within a year, he was able to, on that device in English, speak up to 6-word sentences on his device, and in verbally we got him up to 2 to 3 word utterances verbally. And that's another myth, is that AAC will hurt a child's chances for verbal communication. No, it's going to increase a child's chances for verbal communication. So, and that child will always stick out in my mind, and it's really all due to evaluating the whole person that he was able to get where he was. We want to encourage you to find tools that help streamline your process and documentation. Anything, a tool that's either going to gather data for you, that's a great tool. That's going to help streamline your process. Or a tool that you even create. When you find these tools, or if you're creating them, having them easily accessible is great. But if they're accessible but they're not adaptable, then it's not going to be a beneficial tool for you. So whatever tool if you're either going to use a pre-made tool or you're going to make your own template, please make sure you can easily adapt it to, no matter if you're seeing a child with Rett syndrome or autism or a very medically complex child, make sure it's easily adaptable. All right, so if you're in a school, you might have heard of the Sett Framework. And if you haven't, I encourage you to go to Joy's website. It's right here on the PowerPoint, and take a look at it. Or if your school uses the Sett Framework for evaluations, still take a look at her website if you don't know the background and really why you're using that tool. She's got a great PowerPoint from the horse's mouth on there. All of her resources are printable, and even though the one I have pictured here on the PowerPoint is filled out, she's got blank ones for you to use. Why I like this tool is because it does evaluate the whole person. So you're looking at the student, the environment, the task. What am I trying to get them to do? And then the tool. So it's matching the tool to all of these 3 things: the student, the environment, and the task. And so by the end of it, you have a really great plan of implementing whatever tool was chosen. So this is really great for teamwork as well. If you're working in a team, it's another reason why you want to use an evaluation method such as the Sett Framework. So here's another tool that I've found, and I'm going to say now, I'll make sure that at the end of this, you all will be receiving an email from ALANet with these tools on there. So I'll make sure you know when I'm showing a tool that you will get. So the previous one, Joy's, that one I'm expecting you to go to her website to get. This next one, you will be getting a copy of it. And each tool should have the maker at the bottom. This particular one comes from AAC Tech Connect. There's a conference that I went to, and I've used this tool for many years, and it's just great. It's really making you think about the person. And what you could do is adapt this tool and update it to have some more current things on there. But it's really a 3-part tool. And the first one kind of looks at the skills and features of the person. I'm going to take you to my desktop so we can see this tool a little bit larger. So we're going to go to the person evaluation tool again from AAC Connect. Let's see if we can get a little bit larger. What I love about it is you're looking at the whole person. Even when you're thinking about switches, it's really reminding you here with these arrows that your tool, you're looking at the whole body, and it's not just arms or hands that can select a switch. It's got that reminder arrows there pointing to other parts of the body. So it really helps you take a look at the whole child, what's going on with them physically, and also what's going on with them receptively, cognitively, and their current communication skills, their current fine motor skills. So this type of tool easily used if you're just one person evaluating or if you're evaluating as a team. If you're evaluating as a team, then maybe the speech pathologist does some of this and the OT and PT does some of this eval. So this is really good and easy tool to use. The next page of that tool is the features to consider of a device. So really when you're doing an AAC evaluation, you're feature mapping. You're trying to map features of the device to the child or to the person that you're evaluating. So let's just take a quicker look at that tool. Again, this is page 2. It's still from AAC Tech Connect. And again, I received it at a conference. So again, you could really take this and update it and make it have some more information on it or more current if you need it. But it really is mapping out every single thing from message formulation, what types of stimuli or symbols that the person may need, whether that's text or pictographic or photographic symbols. And it really is just a quick way for you to jot down some things that are working as you're doing these evaluations. And so it's really good to keep good records, and this is kind of like a one sheet tells all. And I'm not sure if you were able to see what I was showing you, so I'm going to pull that up one more time. Device features. So just a quick closer look at that sheet. Hopefully I'm not moving too fast, but again, this is one that you'll be getting a copy of. And all I ask is that if you modify it, please give the original creator, AAC Tech Connect, the credit and tell that you adapted it from them. All right, one more page of that tool. So someone has asked the question that AAC Tech Connect is no longer available. How can I get access to it? So again, at the end of this session, you will be getting a copy of these tools. So the last 3 pages that I'm showing you, you're going to get that in email right after the presentation is over. And even though AAC Tech Connect is no longer available, please do, if you're adapting this tool or using it, please do give them the credit for being the original creators of the document. Okay, so this last one is part 3, and it's just a decision making. You can either have a note sheet be your last page or something like this where you're kind of looking at all the options. So I'll show you this one, and I do apologize that it did scan in a little bit lopsided. And let's see if I have the decision-making tool. So here it kind of lets you take notes on what their funding source is, but also it's giving you options for maybe you trialed 3 things and really letting you gather that information and keeping your options or your rationale, reasons that you're going to continue or reasons that you're not going to continue that trial. And then at the bottom, just summarizing, this is the device that was selected. So if you choose a tool like this or create your own, this is just a very good template to use. But maybe you are a digital person. This is another one that I've found that is a great template or a great tool that's easy to use if you have an iPad. It's an app by Smarty Ears, and it's called AT Eval to Go. I'm just going to quickly take you to their website. I like it because it's comprehensive. It generates a report for you. You can print out that report. You can email it. It allows you to add audio and photos into your report. So if you need to take a picture of something or record audio, you can do that. And it's very easy to use right off the shelf. So let's just briefly look at that on the web. Okay, so again, it's smartyearsapps.com if you want to write that down. And it's AT-eval to go. If you're looking in the App Store and don't find it, just go to their website and download it directly from there. It is $49 if I'm not mistaken, so it has gone up in price since they first created it. But if you haven't taken a look at it since they first created it, they did do some updates to it. This is not going to really pull from features, so to speak. It's really an easy way for you to keep all of your data per student that you're working with. So if you have a lot of private pediatric clients in your clinic that's doing AAC, or you have a lot of students on your caseload that you're doing AT evaluations for, this is a good app for you to keep records. So there's 5 parts: the student-teacher information part, the background information or a file review, the observation and assessment part, recommendation strategies and tools, and important notes. So each one has a tab. It's set up like a notebook, so it's really easy for you to keep everything together. And if you need to copy this into another document, it is possible. It does email it as a PDF, but if you have a PDF converter into Word or something like that, you are able to copy the information into another document such as an IEP. But if you're allowed to attach files to your IEP, this is going to work for you as well. And it generates a report that looks like this, and it has those 5 tabs and everything that you need in it. It does have a pre-existing bank of items that you can pull from, and it's organized into communication, composition, reading, vision, hearing, etc. And it does have an accommodations. It does allow you to create a custom goal or use a few of the goals that might be already in the app. So I'm just going to keep scrolling down here. You are able to adjust a few settings within, and this tool does incorporate the Sett Framework. And so that's another good point about this tool and using it. There is a video tutorial on their website, and it also has some tutorials on how you can save your report to your computer or how do you back up your report. So I'm just going to show you a sample report. Okay, and so when you're using this, it might be a good idea to, especially if you're going to be emailing it to yourself, not to use the name of the student, to respect confidentiality. If you have some type of serial number or case number, use that instead, so that when you email the report to yourself, you're not sharing any private information. And so it's just going to print things out in paragraph form, and it's going to have your any data that you collected will be reflected in there, and any recommendations and strategies and tools that you've come up with. In this particular case, he was really great with photographic symbols, and so we chose the app Go Talk Now for him, and had some important notes that we added. Recommended that he use a protective case of sand. So it's anything that you want to add, it's going to just kind of get it all into a nice report for you. I've never used this particular app to submit a device report because there's a lot of information needed, but maybe this would suffice for your school-based evaluations if it's not insurance-funded related report. Okay, we're going to go back to our presentation and keep going on with tools. So evaluation tools. One tool that I like to use is the Evaluation Genie tool, and it's by Hump Software. I like it because it's easily accessible, it's informal, you're not, it's something that you can do with the child while they're at play. And they may even think that it's a game. It's easy to use, and it has a guide on their website. You gain really useful information about the AAC as a potential, the AAC user as a potential device user. And it's information that you're gaining not only about communication and what they can do cognitively, it's also really good information that you or your team member could gain about their range of motion, about how many stimuli they can handle on a screen. And I used their guide and created my own scoring template for this particular app. So let's just take a quick look at this app. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see the screen. What's nice about it is that you can add your current users. You can add as, I'm not sure if there's a limit on the number of users you can add, but I've had as many as 10 at a time. You can collect data, so you don't have to actually write down anything. This kind of prints out a data sheet for you. If I select the first one here and I go to data, it's actually going to show me what this person was able to do, what this child was able to do, or how far I got in the testing. You can then print things out or go on to the next day of testing. You can get this done. I use it as a screener for AAC, and you can get this done in a very limited amount of time, which is why I like it. I usually don't have to go back and do another session with someone. I can get it done all in one setting. And so it's super easy to use. I'm going to just take you to their website so you can write it down. It's humpsoftware.com. I believe the app, the last time I checked, was about $10. If you go to their website, there is a very quick video here explaining how to use their tool. There's a guide right before the video. There's a link to the guide. I'm going to show you that. It evaluates vision skills, verbal or vocabulary skills, from noun vocabulary to category, inclusion and exclusion. It evaluates core vocabulary knowledge and picture description, word prediction even. So very easy to use. And what I did was I created my own guide, which you're going to get a copy of, or my own score sheet, or how I was reporting my results. So what I did was I took that printout that the app generates, and it keeps all your data. And what I did was create just a way for me to get that all into a paragraph form or into a report form. So you'll get a copy of this. And then what I do when I'm creating a template, it doesn't matter if it's a template for that huge device submission report, or if it's a template for something like this with AAC that I can easily copy into an IEP. my templates all look the same. Every sentence where I'm going to do a gender, I do he, she, so that I can easily just go in and delete the one that I don't need, but it's a template that I can use over and over again. What were they able to do with this particular screener tool? I kind of gave an example of what the tasks they were asked to do, and then how do they do with that. So visual identification, for example, the task required the child to find the balloon, and the balloon was photographic symbol. And how did they do with that? Versus later on, I might talk about it not being a photographic symbol if it was a different type of symbol that was presented later. So this is just one sample of what I did. You can create your own, but such an easy tool that can give you a lot of information. And even though it has the Unity software and pictures in the tool itself, when you get to towards the end of the screener, I'm really thinking, do they understand that level of categorical communication? Do they understand what those symbols represent? And I'm thinking, is this a child that can be taught that language system? Or is this a child who's really picking up when it is just a picture symbol or a photographic symbol? So it's telling me a lot about what language system might be best as I'm doing that observation. But I find that it's a great tool on many levels. Okay, let's get into some data collection tools. This has been my favorite tool. It was from Dynavox, and again, when Toby and Dynavox merged, I'm not sure if if every single tool that Dynavox had on their website is available now. So you will be getting an email copy of this tool. But the main thing is who completes this form. And the important thing to note is that all team members can complete this form. So let's take a quick look at it. And this one is called Examples of Device Use. And again, I got it off of the Dynavox website years ago, and I have been using it ever since 2011. So I'm going to take you to the end of the document. It's 3 pages long. The last page is what I give to and go over with the parent if I'm sending this device home and I need them to gather data, or the classroom teacher or the aide. I'm going over this with everyone. And the important thing to remember when you're gathering data is that you don't need to know every single thing they did with the device. Don't try and capture everything, but try and give certain members of your team a certain task or situation to collect your data. That's going to streamline your process. Know when you are aiding them, when you're providing a cue, and when you're not. And this is a really good section here on reminding when it is yourself, when you're aiding them and when you're not. Or if it is an aide or someone who might not be used to working with the child every day, reminding them to pay attention to when I'm aiding and when I'm not. So what I like is it kind of gives them definitions of what you want them to gather the data on, and then it has a section for you to think about after you've done the trial. So what I do is I give one to the parent, and I give one to a teacher and maybe an aide. So this location here might be, classroom hallway or school hallway or school cafeteria or, art classroom or their main classroom. It could be the speech therapy room, but it's based on which team member I gave the sheet. I'm going to change that location. They're going to record the date. They're going to be the listener. So if it's the parent or the aide, this whole column should be them. If it's the mom, whole column should be mom. Teacher, whole column. And what I do is then I comprise this data when I'm done. So I give them a deadline and a sheet with this sheet, and I'm telling them this is when I expect this to be back, or I'm going to come looking for this information in 2 weeks or in 1 week. They just tell me what it is they were able to say with their device, what was the symbol that was chosen, and if it's more than one symbol, I just put each symbol that was chosen. And what did it say? So the symbol was the symbol for I want glass milk, but the message that was generated was I want milk. Okay? Then was this a spontaneous, a spontaneous communication? Was it a response to a question? If it was accurate, yes or no. And sometimes accuracy, I'm only looking at that if it's accuracy for answering the question. Spontaneous, if you're going to answer that question for a spontaneous remark or message that was generated, then accurate is referring to, are they on topic? Was it related to what we're doing? Independent or aided. If I aided them or gave them a cue, it needs to say A. If it's independent, I. So just a great tool. I always give them the sample here so they can see some examples, and then I make sure I give them the other page, which is blank. And before that, I'm going over all of these directions and also giving them a copy of the directions. So that one has been my favorite tool for data collection. All right, so you want to make sure that the flow of your evaluation and report writing is that you've done some observation first. You've done a screener, whether that is the AAC evaluation genie from the HUMP software or some other type of screener. Whatever screener you're using, you need to think about it as the end result of me screening the child will result in me choosing some tools to implement. Step 3, that you're implementing a tool and you're gathering data in step 4. All of these steps you have to do with the team. There has to be more than just one person. If you're the sole evaluator, then you have to create a team. Just like I made sure the team was involved when I was alone in the clinic. I made a team by launching onto parent and the school team and making sure we were all on the same page. The step 5 is you're going to be writing your report with effective goals. So if you are in a school but you are doing an evaluation for device submission, you actually do have to have a treatment plan as part of that device submission report. If you're in a school and the school is providing the device, then you might only be doing your evaluation report for the IEP. Whatever the case, there's going to be some more practical tips for these report writing. So as you're doing your evaluation, I included a little checklist in this PowerPoint. I want everyone to feel like when you are doing these evaluations that you are the most confident and feeling the most familiar with the tools that you have on hand, but also the tools that you don't have, and know where the sources are to borrow the things that you don't have, whether it's a state organization for AC or whether you're going to use the company and the rep, or maybe the company has a process of borrowing. So here's your checklist for an evaluator. I'm familiar with all the low, light, and high-tech tools and devices, the ones that I have access to and the ones that I don't. I'm familiar with devices approved by insurance and those that are not. That's important because there might be something that's not approved for by insurance that's AC related that might be very helpful for the child in one of the environments that they're in, and you want to be able to provide the information and the resources and where to get those. I'm familiar with the end user's funding source and its requirements. If you're going to be doing an evaluation where you have to submit to insurance or Medicaid or whatever the funding source is, you need to know what its requirements are so that your report doesn't get denied because you didn't know of a certain requirement. Have information available, whether it's via website or company brochure, on all the devices that you don't have at your access to in your facility. Know how to contact tech support for all of the devices that you're doing during your eval process. Sometimes you're going to need that, and it's okay to contact the tech support during your evaluation if you have to get the device going again. Make sure you can program and edit pages as needed per device that you're demonstrating. Being able to edit on the fly is going to be the best way to streamline your AAC evaluation. Have a camera ready and available. Sometimes you just can't take all the data, so make sure you have permission to videotape a child. But after you get that permission, make sure that you are recording some of the things you do, because you could go back and watch that later and gather some information you might not have been able to jot down. Funding sources. Private insurance. Please know that each one is different, but they do primarily follow Medicare and guidelines, and that Medicare is broken up into regions. So each region might have a slightly different interpretation of guidelines or rules. Medicaid. Remember that each state is different. So there might be different requirements about the report format. So know what your state does. One important thing is standardized versus non-standardized testing. In some states, that might be different than the requirement that's on the IEP. If it's a school-based evaluation, I start that, and I start it because schools may have their own requirements on who gets a device and how you're submitting the information on the IEP or what's necessary for them to get a device. And in my case, in South Carolina, schools need 2 standardized test scores, and you can use an observational type tool. And so just know what you're allowed and what you're not allowed to use. For standardized testing, I found the functional communication profile, the Rossetti. Even though they're not going to give you a score, they're considered standardized. So know what's allowable and know what when you can just record your observations. One more thing about report writing. Here are my Brix tips. We want to be dynamic. So be repetitive and descriptive. Rule out other devices and accessories. Have informative writing. Check behind yourself to avoid contradictory statements. Know the report and writing rules of your funding source. Don't forget your treatment plan with functional communication goals. And what I use for your AAC treatment plan, I'm running out of time. So one thing that I like to remember is that you're going to consider all communication partners, environment, and level of communication when you're writing your long-term and your short-term goals. Sometimes funding sources may require you to put in your treatment plan who is the responsible party for troubleshooting, timeline, reassessment, therapy group, what type of therapy you're going to be doing, whether it's group versus individual. So if your funding source requires that information, don't leave it out. I'm going to get to one tool that I really, really like. You are getting a copy of it, and it is the DAG-2. I like it because it's a working treatment plan, so you can start it at the beginning of your evaluation. It's going to give you great goals during your evaluation. It's highly adaptable to create your treatment plan from it, no matter what type of child you are evaluating or what level of communication they are. And you definitely, and it is quite the tool. It's several pages long, but you all will get a copy of it if you haven't seen it. Please look over it. It's very well researched and something that has helped me streamline my evaluations from start to finish. So after the child gets their device and I have developed a treatment plan with it, it actually helps me with the IEP as well, because it's going to get me to help get that child beyond requesting and on to the next level. of communicating per area. So when you're looking at areas, it's linguistic, social, operational, and strategic. Operational and strategic are hard to write goals for, but really easy to do with these tools. So everyone will get a copy of the DAG. So to conclude, the best thing to do when you're thinking about AAC evaluations with young folks, let go of those AAC myths and create some time-saving tools for yourself, even if that means you have to make a template. For easy report writing, I think the easiest thing is to make a template. And I was doing that per, like I had a template that I use for my CP kids or my muscular dystrophy kids, especially when you have to describe their physical characteristics or things that are going on, something that's really easily adaptable. That's where you want to make your template. And then add the information that makes it more individualized as you are doing that eval and report. But if you start off with a template, it's going to streamline your process. Be a team and rely on your team. That's going to make things really easy for the child and for you, the evaluator. And making sure you delegate to that team, especially when it comes to data collection. So I hope that everyone got a chance to hear something that might help them this school year or as they're working with their kiddos. I'm just going to quickly show you what that dynamic goals grid, the DAG2, looks like so that you will be familiar with it when you see it. It's blue. It was a Dynavox product, but it was adapted from a lot of research that a university did. And again, it's a working document so that you can use it per child from start to implementation of the device. So thank you all for joining me today. I'm going to see if there's any questions. Let's see, I don't see any more questions.